All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to relax a little, get something to eat, take care of business, whatever you did. Again, we're so grateful that you've all joined us at this virtual meeting with the world. And today we're going to talk about diamonds. And recycled diamonds specifically, post-consumer, recycled, what that all means. And I'm very excited to have this conversation with my longtime friend Jay, who we go back probably like 25 years.
Approximately.
I probably shouldn't have said that out loud, but it sounded weird saying it out loud. We go back a long time. So it was actually when you got involved with working with diamonds and this post-consumer realm that it really started to come to my attention in our industry, and then I started to hear more and more about it. But I feel like it's an area that people are still very, I guess it's a little vague, and we're confused with the vocabulary and the verbiage that's used around it.
Right.
And so I'm excited to have this talk so that we can clarify some of the things with our expert. And it's a very, very, I mean, diamonds, as we all know, are one of the most controversial stones that has been through so much in our planet. So there's a lot of heightened feelings around this stone. I wanted to touch upon, I know that you're involved in the glossary project, and that has something to do with shedding light on this vocabulary that I'm talking about, that these nuances. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that project and what the aim is for it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Quendi. Hello, everybody. The Jewelry Glossary Project came about close to 5 years ago at the first Jewelry Industry Summit in New York, where a lot of jewelry stakeholders got together to discuss topics relevant to responsible sourcing and ethics around the supply chain for gemstones and jewelry. In one of the many breakout sessions, there was a focus on education, and a committee was formed, and the committee discussed much needed projects that hadn't been around. So one of those, and it became the ideal startup point for that committee, was the idea that there isn't a harmonized, common understanding when it comes to terms specifically related to ethical sourcing or responsible sourcing, or how to address a specific label to green items, which is sort of the placeholder for a lot of things that are noted in that arena. So the team is composed currently of about 6 or 7 of us. It's changed some participants over time, and it takes a lot of work, especially this is sort of a side commitment from all the participants. Yeah. But as of today, you can consult the latest editions of the first 10 terms that we decided to tackle on. Those 10 terms have been the most difficult 10 terms because they're the most controversial. They're the most widely used and misused, mostly.
And misinterpreted, yeah.
Misinterpreted. And within those, recycled is there. The idea of recycled as it pertains to the jewelry industry. When someone says this is recycled gold, what do you mean? If this is a recycled gemstone, what exactly entails the qualifier for that to be true? So it's an interesting thing to look at the moment. And we went through everything that was around already out there. The FTC has a guideline of what to call recycled and what not to call recycled. US regulators and European regulators have specifics in how to address recycled, post-consumer recycled, upcycled, downcycled,
Right.
but they're dedicated to paper industries and things of that nature. So we started the research there, and we narrowed it down to what people can see on the website. I don't have it in front of me, but the
Yeah.
idea.
No, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's all right. The idea of recycle is it's an activity, right? It's not a
Mhm.
new activity by any means. Precious gems and precious metals have been repurposed and recycled since the very moment they had been known to and understood.
Mhm.
So it isn't a new practice. There isn't a novelty around it. But what matters is how you go about it. Um, I'm going to try to keep our focus on recycled gems, right?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah, it
can,
actually leads me, into the next question, which is
yeah,
I think the language that we use, and that's why I brought up the glossary project. I think it's a great project, and what you guys are trying to do is amazing because of the language that we use is so important, and the interpretations that people have on different things. Even this morning, we all started with like, what does ethical mean to us, and we all have different, descriptions and
right.
anyways, so it leads me into the next question that I had, which I think is probably the most frequent question that you or I or anyone working in this field gets when it comes to recycled diamonds. And what is recycled diamond? What's the difference between recycled post-consumer? Is there a difference? Let's talk about that. That's
Cool.
a
Now,
popular topic.
yeah. The focus of our company and the product offering that we have is specifically that post-consumer recycled. So, like I said, it's been a common practice about reutilizing this precious material because they have the amazing sustainable attribute of outlasting their owners. You can today hold a piece of jewelry that was, churched, casted, molded 400 years ago, 500 years ago,
Right.
700 years ago, and it's still in its purest form without degradation or decomposition, which is great. Now, because the intention that we have in providing this alternative to the product is to elevate the sourcing practice for the designer maker of today's world. We create a distinction because anything that returns to market to be reutilized, it's considered recycled. And this is in most of the publications that define the word recycle, again, across industries. So if the store in the corner liquidates inventory that they haven't sold to public, and they take apart the stones, melt down the gold,
Yeah.
that is in practice recycling.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. For many years, dental fillings use gold and other metals. You can recycle that, right?
Yep.
So electronic parts can be recycled, et cetera, et cetera. But when we narrow it down to post-consumer recycled, we are addressing the responsible sourcing mentality, because what we like to do is for the way we put it in practice, theoretically, is like for every carat of diamond that is post-consumer recycled is one less carat of a diamond that needed to be extracted newly from material, right? And the idea is that the older it is, the more of a sustainable aspect it has for in this conversation.
Yeah.
And the idea is that something was faceted, polished, set, worn, loved, and then it enters the market again to close that, in that last phase of circularity, and then starts again for a next phase, right? It's that's the important distinction that we make, And like I said, recycle, both practices are recycled, but post-consumer recycle really elevates the conversation.
Yeah.
And that makes it important.
In the responsible sense. Yeah, I get that. And it's almost like the post-consumer it's a cat. It has 9 lives at least.
Yeah.
I love hearing you talk about it because I think it's such an unclear area for people to try to understand and wrap their head around. That, is recycled the same as repurposed? Is do they all go together, and what are the distinctions, and do they matter?
Right.
Yeah. So you kind of answered the next question I had regarding the relevancy of post-consumer with or recycled diamonds in responsible sourcing.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to touch on, what as a buyer, as a designer, when you're going to choose a diamond and you're wanting to do something responsibly, sustainably, like what kind of things can you give your client the confidence that this is a responsible choice?
A responsible choice, yeah. So I want to address the fact that in the pursuit of carried out an ethical practice in an ethical business, right?
Mm-hmm.
We struggle with what to pick first and what to set as a top 1, top 2, top 3 priorities.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of recycling, since its conception across industries, is the idea of environmental conservation and preservation.
Yep.
If we have already mined for 100 years this product, why don't we just keep cycling it to minimize the impact on the extraction? This is across industries. Why don't we continue to recycle so that we avoid waste created by the extraction of this product?
Extraction process.
So generally speaking, the idea when someone approaches me with the conviction that what they want or their client wants is a repurposed stone or a post-consumer recycled stone, the priority there is environmental concerns, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the side of diamonds, particularly as we know, the labor markets are incredibly on the losing side of the inequity of profits and earnings from a very large, very widely spread market. So in that regard, social concerns are part of the conversation too. Now, in terms of we want to expand this on people use reclaimed, repurposed, and upcycled. These all are valid labeling.
Mm-hmm.
What's really important is to understand the provenance and communicating and documenting the provenance, because as we have these conversations here and around the world, the majority of the conversations are now guided towards using blockchain to document every step of the journey.
Yeah.
Using a specific tracking for whether it's large or small operations from mind to finger, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if data collection and analysis, it's what's going to elevate the market at its own, I think we should also create a point of provenance information for everything that re-enters the market and recycles back into place. So you can use the label that you want, and you can practice those labels within your business, but create a point of provenance, a point of information that it's that's translated later on.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important point to make. It's all about the provenance net. It's
Right.
like we have a responsibility, but and so many of these stones, especially in the it's how do you find the beginning point? And if you're
Right.
dealing with antiques and estate heirloom vintage pieces,
Yeah.
and you don't maybe know. But what I like to think about is, this might be a strange analogy, but we're all trying to reduce plastic in the world, right? And so
Mhm.
the plastic that's already been made, it's existing, it's here, and it's like, how do we repurpose it? We can't go back and delete what was already extracted or
Exactly.
created and made, and then it's taking a responsibility of something and like, well, what's the next stage of the journey of this piece?
Exactly right.
And not just thinking in terms of waste. And we
Right.
could get deeper into that conversation when talking about lab created diamonds. We're not going to go there, but that's a whole nother subject. Um, but I think it's a really important conversation. As far as the provenance and I'm curious, as I'm sure many of our listeners are, about the certification process. I know you're certified with SCS Global Services, and I want to know, and I'm sure a lot of people want to know what that process is, because I know it could
Right.
probably seem intimidating, and is it rigorous? What are their parameters? And what brought you to trust them as a source for certification?
Yeah. SES Global Services, they stand out particularly in the area of environmental conservation, like I mentioned. They have two very important roles. They are an organization that is able to develop standards for industries, and they also audit companies against those standards, to which companies can apply, qualify, and get certified against. This happens on a yearly basis, and you have to meet obligations on a sort of an upward mobile scale of learning, adoption, and change, that encompasses everything that's required for you to earn the certification. So SES is an environmental auditing firm. They ensure that companies across industries are doing what they can to preserve the environment, and to and reduce impacts on environment over time, first and foremost. And of course, the social and human component. They evaluate your policies with respect to, from treating employees well to communicating your internal code of conduct to the outside world, to how to deal with complaints. Something, it's got to be, a very stipulated, um, um, guidelines for everybody to evaluate. How do you go about these processes? So it is a rigorous process to
Mm-hmm.
be audited against. Of course, the standard basically points at what qualifies you in those aspects of the business. Just to give an example, on the documentation part of gem sourcing, you have to show proof, and you have to keep records of the person that you buy from, the principals, their business address, and how do you make sure that that information exists. They have to be a legitimate business, established business, so on and so forth. You have to keep records of the purchases. You have to, by means of, nowadays is the only way, but by means of an inventory software, keep track of each step of that gem inside, internally,
Right.
and up until the point of sale. And that, for me, for example, as I try to salvage material, diamonds and gems that are being, many times you have to repolish, fix dents, or chips that happen to it,
Yeah.
so that they can be on their next home, and for 100 years.
Yeah.
So I gotta keep record of each step of the way for that stone, document it, and be able to have it as an auditable document for them.
So you're documenting every time that you move the stone, you change
Yeah.
the stone, anything happens to the stone, it's documented. and report.
Exactly right. Everything follows the same serial number. They look at the way that you communicate the language about your product, what the claims are. How do you document it on a simple invoice? How do you document it on your website? How do you advertise with it? They make sure you have. I'm a very small business, so the impacts that I would have on larger environmental concerns or label practices are minimized greatly. But they want to see that you have a proper and yearly updated employee handbook. They want to see that you have proper, anything related to up to code employment practices and how you pay your employees and how do you deal with creating a culture of that it's thinking for the employee, not the employer, sorry, and so on and so forth. So and then on the side of environment, you create a baseline of where the company is at a certain point in time, and you have to keep you have to sustain a small or a certain level of impact, whether from how I get myself to work, whether I drive, and if it's an electric car, if I take the bus, how many miles, so that you can measure my impact on gas emissions,
your carbon footprint,
my carbon footprint.
I didn't realize. See, I just learned that. That's fascinating, and it's actually, as rigorous as it is, it's so nice to know that they're taking it to those lengths.
True.
And this is also the reason why I send all my diamond clients to you, because you've been through this. It sounds like a really rigorous process. How long did it take? And do they go through all of your inventory every time you have a new piece? Then you get it certified with them, and how does that work?
The auditing needs to happen in person for the first time, perhaps the second time too, and of course the first 2 years it's an adoption phase. And they understand that you are entering into an adoption of everything about your business and how to document it. So they work with you, but the idea is that after your baseline, you have to maintain it and keep at it. And in areas in which you need improvement, you have to show the improvement year after year after year. So on this last certification, for example, the report that results from the audit, and this one time was a remote audit. You have to send out all of the documents, all of your purchases for the year, and explain each transaction, each chain. If I had employees, how long were they on the books for? What was the kind of pay? What kind of documents they signed? What was the communication like? Et cetera, et cetera. Even for contractor situations as well. So again, I am a small player, very easy. I know, for example, for a company like Hoover and Strong, who are also SES certified for the recycled metals.
Yeah,
that's got to be, probably a dedicated team that's always on a monthly basis for, to say the least, and so on and so forth. But what's interesting is that the rigor of the first 2 years sets you on a path of, just being practicable about those specifics. So not only you have the opportunity to elevate your practice, but you basically become efficient at maintaining that. Yeah. So you can throw any question at me in relates to my impact to environment and that, and I know the numbers, so on and so forth, based on the last couple of years. So it's interesting that way. It's painful, but it just really elevates your knowledge.
It's worth it. It's like you stay up to standards for yourself too, because you're constantly you're constantly having to rethink and record everything that you're doing.
Exactly.
And it's, like you said, painful, I imagine, but it's so valuable. And I feel that you're your customers must be so grateful that you can have that to prove, and you should be proud that you've gone through the process. And it's almost like just keeping it updated. You get, like you said, more efficient at it, and it keeps you at a certain standard.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's a fundamental, really created a difference for us as a player in the business. And I'm in New York. There are another 2,500 diamond dealers
I know.
in New York.
Yeah.
And New York itself, it's a landing lot for new production, for
it's
repurposed everything. It's just massive. So it really creates a difference. And it's a differentiator for us from on one side. And on the other, it offers that added level of confidence on what we do, because I can sit here and talk as much of what I do and whatnot, but once you have a third party to verify your claims, to create a better understanding of the company provides to the trade, that's when it becomes different. That is really,
it legitimizes you in the eyes of everyone, because you're not just claiming something. You have a third party vetting for you.
Exactly. They're making sure that we are not just talking the talk, as I say, but we actually walk and there's measurable assessment on and stuff. So,
and that's really what unites this group, our ethical supply. We say it all the time that we're all so different and we all conduct our business completely differently, but the mentality is the same, and that's what brought us all together, is that we hold ourselves responsible to recognize the impact that everything that we do in our business has on the environment and the humanitarian aspect as well.
That's right.
So we are coming closer to the end. I had a couple last minute questions. One was about, there's something about the length of, what about the length of time, makes a post-consumer, qualifies a gem as post-consumer, because that's something that comes up, and I think you would be perfect to ask for that.
Exactly. I think you and I were discussing that people can relate to the idea that how old is something old, and how something new can stay new. You buy a new car, and the moment you drive it out of the lot, starts losing value. So it's like there's that diminishing value. If you sell it next day, is it still new, or is it still an old car? Is it a new car, right? So again, the idea is to have the conversation. People ask, so how do I know how long do I have to wear something to consider it post-consumer? And it's an easy, it's the most instinctive question to have. But the idea is that the qualifier for post-consumer, which is certainly the wear, it's been worn, loved, and now it could be repurposed.
Yeah.
But it's, even though it could potentially be measured in time, I like to better understand it as a, this 1 carat diamond. It's one carat unit that is not a newly extracted unit of material, right? This is not no waste rock, no mill tailings, no coal refuse, no wash limes, etc. Did not have to happen for this to become part of the trade again and to be repurposed. So that's sort of the measurement for what qualifies post-consumer, what doesn't qualify post-consumer. The idea if it's owned and loved, for at least, a season, then it's post-consumer.
Yeah.
And a client of mine asked me, hey, so this is a Canadian diamond, and the guy came back to upgrade it because his girlfriend thought it was too small, but he didn't wear it. Is it post-consumer? Yes.
Good question. No? Good question. See, those are the questions that come.
But again, the idea is that you're making the person aware that you have mindful options to newly mined material. And again, this becomes it's been an issue specifically in the area of diamonds, right?
Yeah.
We tend to associate environmental damage and human abuses to these larger enterprise, this larger industrial mining apparatus that have existed for many years, hundreds of years. That has also created a vacuum for even smaller operations to bring violence and just horrible things for smaller communities that have zero advantage and have zero, it's profits in the system. But on the side of color gems, because of the type of operations that happen, there's also large scale, but the most of it's smaller operations. It's a completely different conversation. So
it's a really good distinction to bring up, though.
Right.
And yes, we should. I know we're out of time, and we can continue this conversation in the lounge at our tables. Everyone who hasn't gone and visited the tables should. Jay is such a wealth of knowledge in this area and can go on, and I have endless questions. But yeah, I hope this conversation was helpful for people that have had. We just tried to brush upon some of the most frequently asked questions in this realm, and we want to continue the conversation. So please come visit us in the lounge, at the tables. Thanks again for coming. We're so happy that we have a community of people that care about these subjects.
Thank you, Quendi. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the tables.